Part 7. Common and Not So Common Attacks and Threats. Examples of some of the biggest cybersecurity attacks. There have been many notable cybersecurity attacks throughout history, but here are some of the biggest and most damaging ones. Equifax. In 2017, Equifax, a credit reporting agency, suffered a massive data breach that exposed the personal information of over 147 million people, including names, social security numbers, birth dates, and more. Yahoo suffered multiple data breaches in 2013 and 2014 that compromised the personal information of all of its 3 billion user accounts, including names, email addresses, birth dates, and security questions and answers. Target. In 2013, Target experienced a data breach that exposed the personal and financial information of over 110 million customers, including credit and debit card numbers, names, addresses, and phone numbers. Sony Pictures. In 2014, Sony Pictures experienced a cyber attack that resulted in the theft and release of a large amount of confidential and sensitive data, including emails, employee data, financial information, and unreleased movies. WannaCry. In 2017, WannaCry ransomware spread rapidly across the globe, infecting hundreds of thousands of computers in over 150 countries, and causing significant disruptions to critical infrastructure, including healthcare, transportation, and telecommunications. NotPetya. In 2017, NotPetya, a destructive malware attack, caused significant damage to numerous companies, particularly in Ukraine, where it disrupted critical infrastructure, including banks, energy companies, and transportation systems. SolarWinds. More recently, in 2020, a massive cyber attack on SolarWinds, a network management software company, resulted in the compromise of numerous government and private sector organizations worldwide, including several U.S. government agencies. These are just a few examples of some of the biggest cybersecurity attacks in recent history. It is important to note that as technology evolves, so do the threats and risks associated with it, and it is crucial for individuals and organizations to take proactive measures to protect themselves from potential cyber threats. There are several common cyber threats that individuals and organizations should be aware of, including phishing. Phishing is a technique used by cybercriminals to trick individuals into providing sensitive information, such as login credentials, social security numbers, or credit card information. This is usually done through a fake email or website that looks legitimate. Malware. Malware is any software designed to damage or exploit computer systems. It can come in various forms such as viruses, worms, trojans, and spyware. Malware can be used to steal sensitive information, take control of systems, or cause damage to devices. Ransomware. Ransomware is a type of malware that encrypts a victim's files and demands a ransom payment in exchange for the decryption key. This is a particularly insidious type of attack, as it can be difficult to recover data without paying a ransom. DDoS attacks. Distributed denial of service. DDoS attacks are used to overload a website or network with traffic, causing it to become unavailable to users. DDoS attacks are often carried out using botnets, which are networks of infected devices that are controlled by a hacker. Man-in-the-middle attacks. A man-in-the-middle (MITM) attack occurs when a cybercriminal intercepts communication between two parties in order to eavesdrop or manipulate the conversation. This can be done through compromised Wi-Fi networks, phishing, or other means. Password attacks. Password attacks are used to gain unauthorized access to systems or accounts by guessing or stealing passwords. This can be done through brute force attacks, where the attacker tries a large number of passwords, or through phishing attacks, where the attacker tricks the user into revealing their password. Social engineering. Social engineering is a technique used to manipulate people into revealing sensitive information or performing actions that are not in their best interest. This can be done through phishing, pretexting, baiting, or other methods. Insider threats. Insider threats occur when someone with authorized access to a system or network intentionally or accidentally causes harm. This can be done by stealing data, introducing malware, or causing system failures. These are just a few examples of the many cyber threats that exist today. It is important to stay vigilant and take steps to protect yourself and your organization from these and other potential attacks. Threat actors overview. Threat actors refer to individuals or groups who engage in activities that pose a potential threat to the security or integrity of an organization or system. Threat actors can be categorized based on their motivation, expertise, and objectives. Some common types of threat actors include hackers, individuals or groups who use technical expertise to gain unauthorized access to systems, networks, or data. Cybercriminals, individuals or groups who engage in illegal activities online, such as stealing personal or financial information, conducting fraud, or distributing malware. State-sponsored actors, individuals or groups who are sponsored by a nation-state to conduct espionage or cyber attacks against foreign governments, organizations, or individuals, insiders, employees or contractors who have authorized access to systems or data but misuse their access for personal gain or to cause harm. Activists, individuals or groups who use cyber attacks as a means to advance a political or social cause. It is important for organizations to be aware of different types of threat actors and their tactics, as this can help them develop effective security strategies and mitigate potential risks. Ethical hacking, also known as white hat hacking, is the practice of using hacking techniques to identify and fix security vulnerabilities in computer systems, networks, and applications. Ethical hackers use the same tools and methods as malicious hackers, but they do so with the explicit permission of the system owners and with the goal of improving security rather than causing harm. The purpose of ethical hacking is to identify weaknesses in security systems before malicious hackers can exploit them. Ethical hackers use various techniques such as vulnerability scanning, penetration testing, and social engineering to uncover vulnerabilities in computer systems and networks. They then report their findings to the system owner so that the vulnerabilities can be fixed before they are exploited by malicious actors. Ethical hacking is an important practice in today's digital world because of the increasing number of cyber attacks and the damage they can cause. By identifying and fixing vulnerabilities before they are exploited by malicious actors, ethical hackers can help prevent data breaches, theft of sensitive information, and other types of cyber attacks. 7.1 Ransomware is a type of malicious software, malware, that is designed to encrypt files on a victim's computer, making them inaccessible, and demanding a ransom payment in exchange for the decryption key that would allow the victim to regain access to their files. Ransomware attacks typically begin with the victim being tricked into opening a file or clicking a link in an email or on a website, which then allows the malware to infect their system. Once the malware has encrypted the victim's files, a message will typically appear on their screen demanding payment, often in the form of cryptocurrency, in exchange for the decryption key. Ransomware attacks have become increasingly common in recent years and can have serious consequences for individuals, businesses, and organizations of all sizes. Some ransomware strains may even threaten to publicly release sensitive information if the ransom is not paid, adding an additional layer of pressure on the victim. The best way to protect against ransomware is to ensure that your computer and software are up to date with the latest security patches, to use antivirus software, and to exercise caution when opening files or clicking on links from unknown sources. 7.2 Botnets is a network of internet-connected devices, such as computers, servers, and IoT devices, which are infected with malware and controlled remotely by a malicious actor. Botnets are typically used for malicious purposes, such as carrying out DDoS attacks, sending spam emails, stealing sensitive data, or distributing malware. The devices in a botnet are usually infected through malware that exploits vulnerabilities in their software or through social engineering techniques that trick users into downloading and installing malicious software. Once infected, the devices become part of the botnet and can be controlled by the botmaster, who can issue commands to the entire network or to individual devices. Botnets can be difficult to detect and mitigate, as they are often spread across multiple geographic locations and may use encryption to conceal their communications. However, there are a variety of techniques that can be used to identify and disrupt botnets, such as network traffic analysis, behavioral analysis, and the use of antivirus software and intrusion detection systems. 7.3 Denial of service attack is a type of cyber attack in which an attacker attempts to overwhelm a targeted system or network with traffic, data, or requests to the point where the system becomes unavailable to legitimate users. The attack works by consuming the resources of the targeted system or network, such as CPU usage, bandwidth, or memory, and preventing it from serving legitimate requests. In this type of attack, the attacker uses a network of compromised devices to flood the targeted system or network with traffic, making it difficult or impossible for legitimate users to access it. Application layer attack. This type of attack targets a specific application or service on the targeted system, overwhelming it with requests or exploiting vulnerabilities in the application to bring it down. Flood attack. This type of attack floods the targeted system or network with a large amount of traffic or data, consuming its resources and making it unavailable to legitimate users. Buffer overflow attack. This type of attack exploits a vulnerability in a system or application by sending more data than it can handle, causing it to crash or become unavailable. To protect against DOS attacks, organizations can implement security measures such as firewalls, intrusion detection and prevention systems, and traffic filtering. It is also important to have an incident response plan in place to quickly identify and mitigate the attack. 7.4. Bootkit and rootkit malware is a type of malware that infects the boot process of a computer's operating system. It typically targets the master boot record, MBR, or the Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, UEFI, firmware to gain control of the system before the operating system loads. Bootkits are particularly stealthy and difficult to detect because they operate at a low level, below the operating system and many traditional security tools. Once a bootkit infects a system, it can persist even after the system is rebooted or the hard drive is reformatted. The goal of a bootkit is usually to give an attacker persistent access to the infected system and to enable them to perform various malicious activities, such as stealing sensitive data, installing additional malware, or controlling the system remotely. Preventing bootkit infections typically involves using secure boot technologies, keeping firmware and operating systems up to date, and using security software that can detect and remove bootkits. Additionally, best practices such as not downloading suspicious files or opening attachments from unknown sources can help to prevent bootkit infections. A rootkit is a type of malicious software or code that is designed to gain privileged access to a computer system or network without being detected. It is usually installed by an attacker who wants to gain unauthorized access to a system or network for malicious purposes, such as stealing sensitive information, spying on users, or controlling the system remotely. Rootkits are often designed to hide their presence from the operating system and other security software by altering system files, registry entries, or other critical components of the system. This makes them difficult to detect and remove, and they can remain hidden for extended periods of time, allowing the attacker to maintain access and control over the system. There are different types of rootkits, including kernel-level rootkits, which operate at the level of the operating system kernel, and user-level rootkits, which operate at the user level of the operating system. Some rootkits are also able to hide their presence in memory and can modify their behavior dynamically to avoid detection. Rootkits can be installed through a variety of methods, including exploiting vulnerabilities in software or hardware, tricking users into downloading and installing them, or using social engineering techniques to gain access to a system. Protecting your system from rootkits requires a combination of good security practices, such as keeping your software and operating system up to date, using anti-malware software, and being cautious when downloading and installing software from unknown sources. 7.5. Email spoofing is a technique used by spammers or scammers to forge the sender's email address in an email message to deceive the recipient into believing that the email is coming from a trusted source. This is done by modifying the email header information, which contains the sender's email address and other details about the message. Spoofed emails can be used for various purposes, such as phishing attacks, spamming, or spreading malware. For example, a phishing email may be disguised as a legitimate email from a bank or other financial institution, and the recipient may be asked to click on a link or provide sensitive information, such as their login credentials or credit card details. To prevent email spoofing, email service providers and organizations use various techniques, such as SPF, Sender Policy Framework, DKIM, Domain Keys Identified Mail, and MARC, Domain-Based Message Authentication, Reporting, and Conformance. These technologies help to verify the authenticity of the sender's email address and reduce the risk of spoofed emails. Additionally, users can also take precautions, such as avoiding opening suspicious emails, checking the sender's email address, and not clicking on links or downloading attachments from unknown sources. 7.6 Email bombing, also known as email flooding, is a form of cyber attack in which a large number of emails are sent to a particular email address or domain, with the intention of overwhelming the recipient's inbox and potentially causing a denial of service (DOS) attack. The emails may contain large attachments, repetitive content, or be sent at a high frequency. This can result in the recipient's email server becoming overloaded and unable to process legitimate email traffic, causing a disruption to their normal operations. Email bombing is considered a malicious activity and is illegal in many countries. It can cause significant harm to businesses and individuals, including loss of productivity, damage to reputation, and financial losses. To protect against email bombing, individuals and organizations should implement measures such as using spam filters, limiting the number of messages that can be received from a particular sender, and monitoring email traffic for unusual activity. It is also important to report any instances of email bombing to the relevant authorities. 7.7 A man-in-the-middle attack, MITM, is a type of cyber attack where an attacker intercepts communication between two parties and injects themselves into the conversation without either party knowing. The attacker can then eavesdrop on or modify the communication, potentially stealing sensitive information such as passwords or financial data. MITM attacks can be carried out through various methods, including spoofing. The attacker creates a fake website or network to intercept the communication. To prevent MITM attacks, it is important to use secure communication protocols, such as HTTPS, and to ensure that software and systems are kept up to date with the latest security patches. It is also important to be cautious when connecting to public Wi-Fi networks, as these are often unsecured and can be used by attackers to carry out MITM attacks. 7.8 A backdoor threat. In computer security, a backdoor is a hidden method of bypassing normal authentication or security controls in a computer system, software application, or network. Backdoors can be intentionally created by software developers or hackers to provide access to a system or network without going through the normal authentication process. Backdoors can also be used to gain access to a system after a password has been changed, or to maintain access to a system after the initial exploit has been discovered and patched. Backdoors can take many forms, including hidden user accounts, secret commands or key combinations, and hidden network protocols. They can be difficult to detect and can remain hidden for extended periods, making them a serious threat to the security of computer systems and networks. Preventing backdoors requires a multi-layered approach to security, including strong access controls, regular software updates and patching, and ongoing monitoring for suspicious activity. Organizations should also educate their users on best practices for computer security, such as creating strong passwords and avoiding suspicious emails or links. 7.9 Advanced persistent threats refer to an ongoing and targeted cybersecurity attack that is conducted by an adversary who is highly skilled and well-resourced. These types of threats are characterized by their stealthy and continuous nature, as the attacker often uses sophisticated techniques to evade detection and maintain access to the targeted system or network over an extended period of time. Persistent threats can take many forms, including malware infections, phishing attacks, and social engineering tactics. The attackers behind persistent threats are often motivated by financial gain, intellectual property theft, or political espionage, and they may target a wide range of organizations, from government agencies and financial institutions to healthcare providers and educational institutions. To defend against persistent threats, organizations must implement robust cybersecurity measures, such as continuous monitoring, threat hunting, and incident response plans. They must also educate employees on the importance of cybersecurity hygiene and awareness to prevent social engineering attacks, such as phishing. Finally, they must stay up to date with the latest threat intelligence and security technologies to keep pace with the ever-evolving threat landscape. 7.10 An ARP attack, also known as ARP spoofing or ARP poisoning, is a type of cyber attack where an attacker sends falsified address resolution protocol (ARP) messages over a local area network (LAN). The goal of an ARP attack is to associate the attacker's MAC address with the IP address of another device on the network, such as the default gateway, so that all traffic intended for that IP address is redirected to the attacker's machine. This can allow the attacker to intercept and read sensitive information, modify network traffic, or even launch further attacks. ARP attacks can be prevented through the use of various security measures, such as implementing network segmentation, using network intrusion detection systems, and implementing secure ARP protocols. Additionally, using strong encryption and secure communication protocols can help prevent attackers from intercepting and reading network traffic. ARP spoofing. The attacker spoofs the Address Resolution Protocol, ARP, to intercept communication between two devices on a local network. DNS spoofing. The attacker spoofs the domain name system, DNS, to redirect the victim to a fake website. SSL stripping. The attacker downgrades the secure communication to an unencrypted one, allowing them to intercept and read the communication. 7.11. A honeypot is a security mechanism used to detect, deflect, or counteract attempts at unauthorized use of information systems. It involves setting up a system or network with vulnerabilities intentionally, in order to attract and monitor cyber attackers or malicious software and to gain insights into their methods and motives. Honeypots can be classified into two types: production honeypots and research honeypots. Production honeypots are designed to protect production networks and systems by diverting attackers away from critical resources. Research honeypots, on the other hand, are used for academic and research purposes, and are set up to gather data on attackers' techniques, tactics, and motives. Honeypots can be used as part of a broader cybersecurity strategy to gather intelligence about potential cyber threats, improve incident response capabilities, and provide early warning of attacks. However, honeypots can also pose security risks if they are not properly secured, monitored, and maintained, and can be used as a vector for attackers to gain access to production networks. 7.12. Spear phishing is a type of cyber attack that targets specific individuals or organizations, usually through email or other forms of electronic communication. Unlike regular phishing attacks that are more generic and widespread, spear phishing attacks are highly targeted and personalized. The attackers conduct extensive research on their intended victims to gather information that can be used to make phishing attempts more convincing and increase the chances of success. In a spear phishing attack, the attacker typically poses as a trusted individual or entity, such as a colleague, manager, or a well-known organization, to trick the recipient into revealing sensitive information or taking a particular action. The messages or communications used in spear phishing attacks are carefully crafted to appear legitimate and often employ social engineering techniques to manipulate the recipient's emotions or sense of urgency. Spear phishing attacks can be highly effective because they exploit the trust and familiarity that individuals have with their colleagues or organizations. The attackers may use information gathered from public sources, social media, or previous data breaches to customize their messages and make them more convincing. By tricking victims into providing sensitive information like passwords, credit card numbers, or account credentials, attackers can gain unauthorized access to systems, steal sensitive data, or carry out other malicious activities. To protect yourself from spear phishing attacks, it is important to be cautious and vigilant while handling emails or other electronic communications. Some recommended practices include: verify the sender's identity, pay attention to the sender's email address and any suspicious or unusual aspects of the message. If you are unsure about the authenticity of an email, contact the supposed sender through a different communication channel to confirm its legitimacy. Be cautious of unexpected or urgent requests. Spear phishing attacks often create a sense of urgency or exploit emotional triggers to prompt immediate action. Take a moment to verify the request independently before responding or providing any sensitive information. Think before clicking, avoid clicking on links or downloading attachments from suspicious or unverified sources. Hover over links to see the actual destination URL before clicking and be wary of shortened URLs or misleading hyperlinks. Keep software up to date. Regularly update your operating system, antivirus software, web browsers, and other applications to ensure you have the latest security patches and protection against known vulnerabilities. Be cautious with personal information online. Limit the amount of personal information you share publicly on social media platforms or other online forums. The less information available to attackers, the harder it is for them to personalize their spear phishing attempts. Educate yourself and stay informed. Stay updated on the latest phishing techniques and security best practices. Organizations often provide awareness training to help their employees recognize and respond to phishing attempts effectively. By following these practices and maintaining a healthy skepticism towards unsolicited or suspicious communications, you can reduce the risk of falling victim to spear phishing attacks. 7.13 Smishing is a form of phishing that is carried out through text messages, SMS, or other messaging platforms like WhatsApp or Viber. It is a type of social engineering attack where the attacker tries to trick individuals into providing sensitive information or performing certain actions by sending fraudulent messages. The term smishing is a combination of SMS and phishing. Like traditional phishing, smishing attempts to deceive victims by posing as a legitimate entity, such as a bank, government agency, or service provider. The messages often contain urgent requests or alarming statements to create a sense of urgency and panic, pushing the recipient to respond quickly without thinking. Smishing messages typically contain links to fake websites or phone numbers to call, asking for personal information like credit card numbers, social security numbers, passwords, or other sensitive data. The attackers may also attempt to trick victims into downloading malware-infected attachments or apps that can compromise their devices and data. To protect yourself from smishing attacks, consider the following measures. Be cautious with messages. Treat unsolicited messages with skepticism, especially those requesting personal information or urgently asking you to act. Verify the source. Contact the organization directly using a trusted phone number or official website to confirm the authenticity of the message. Do not click on suspicious links. Avoid clicking on links in messages from unknown or suspicious sources. Hover over the link to see the actual URL before clicking and be cautious even if the link appears legitimate. Keep your devices updated. Regularly update your smartphone's operating system, applications, and antivirus software to ensure you have the latest security patches. Install trusted security software. Consider installing reputable mobile security software that can detect and block smishing attempts. Educate yourself. Stay informed about common phishing and smishing techniques. Learn to recognize red flags and share this knowledge with friends and family to help protect them as well. Remember, staying vigilant and using common sense when receiving messages can go a long way in preventing falling victim to smishing attacks. 7.14 Farming, also known as phishing with a twist, is a type of cyber attack that involves the redirection of website traffic to a fraudulent website without the user's knowledge or consent. Unlike traditional phishing, which relies on tricking users into visiting fake websites by clicking on malicious links, farming manipulates the domain name system, DNS, or other network-level vulnerabilities to redirect users to malicious websites. In a farming attack, the attacker compromises a DNS server or manipulates the user's local DNS settings, often through malware or DNS cache poisoning. When a user attempts to visit a legitimate website by entering its URL into a web browser, the manipulated DNS settings redirect the request to a fake website that closely resembles the original one. This can lead users to unknowingly enter their sensitive information, such as login credentials, credit card details, or personal information, into the fake website. The goal of farming attacks is to deceive users and steal their personal information or engage in other malicious activities. This type of attack can be particularly dangerous because users may not realize they are on a fraudulent website, as the URL and appearance can be convincingly similar to the legitimate website. To protect against farming attacks, it is important to keep your computer and devices up to date with security patches, use reliable antivirus software, and exercise caution when clicking on links or downloading files. It is also advisable to regularly check your DNS settings and monitor your online accounts for any suspicious activity. If you suspect that you have been a victim of a farming attack or encounter a suspicious website, it is recommended to report it to the appropriate authorities and contact the legitimate website's administrators to alert them of the issue. 7.15 Scareware refers to a type of malicious software or deceptive tactics used by cybercriminals to scare or deceive users into taking certain actions that benefit the attacker. The primary goal of scareware is to trick users into believing that their computer is infected with malware or other security threats, and then convincing them to purchase fake or unnecessary software or services. Scareware typically operates through various methods such as pop-up ads, fake antivirus alerts, and aggressive marketing techniques. 7.15 Scareware refers to a type of malicious software or deceptive tactics used by cybercriminals to scare or deceive users into taking certain actions that benefit the attacker. The primary goal of scareware is to trick users into believing that their computer is infected with malware or other security threats, and then convincing them to purchase fake or unnecessary software or services. Scareware typically operates through various methods such as pop-up ads, fake antivirus alerts, and aggressive marketing techniques. Rogue security software. Scareware often leads users to websites where they are prompted to download or purchase fake antivirus or security software. These programs may have convincing names and interfaces, mimicking legitimate security products. However, they do not provide any real protection and are solely designed to extract money from unsuspecting users. It is important to note that scareware is malicious and can have harmful consequences. Users who fall victim to scareware may not only waste their money on useless software but also expose their computers to further security risks. To protect yourself from scareware, it is essential to practice safe browsing habits, keep your operating system and antivirus software up to date, and be cautious of unexpected pop-up ads or alerts that appear suspicious. 7.16 Phishing, also known as voice phishing, is a type of social engineering attack that uses voice communication, typically over the phone, to deceive individuals into providing sensitive information or performing certain actions. It is a play on the terms voice and phishing, which refers to a similar type of attack conducted through email or other electronic communication. In a phishing attack, the attacker typically poses as a legitimate entity, such as a bank representative, government agency official, or tech support personnel. They use various tactics to gain the trust of the target and convince them to disclose sensitive information like credit card numbers, social security numbers, login credentials, or other personal and financial details. Phishing attacks often involve manipulation and social engineering techniques to create a sense of urgency or fear in the target, making them more likely to comply with the attacker's requests. For example, the attacker might claim there has been suspicious activity on the target's account and request immediate action or verification of personal information to resolve the issue. To protect yourself from phishing attacks, it is essential to be cautious and follow these best practices. Be skeptical, be cautious of unsolicited calls, especially if they request sensitive information or ask you to take immediate action. Verify the caller's identity. If someone claims to be from a particular organization, verify their identity independently. Look up the official contact information and call back using a trusted phone number to ensure you are speaking to a legitimate representative. Do not provide personal information. Avoid giving out personal or financial information over the phone unless you initiated the call and are confident about the recipient's identity. Be aware of social engineering tactics. Attackers might try to manipulate you emotionally by creating a sense of urgency, fear, or trust. Stay vigilant and avoid making hasty decisions based solely on such tactics. Keep software up to date. Regularly update your devices and software to protect against known vulnerabilities that attackers might exploit. Report suspicious calls. If you receive a suspicious phishing call, report it to the appropriate authorities, such as your local law enforcement or the organization the attacker claimed to represent. By staying vigilant, being skeptical, and following these precautions, you can reduce the risk of falling victim to phishing attacks. 7.17 Data destruction attacks aim to destroy or render data inaccessible, often to cause harm or disruption. These attacks can have serious consequences, such as loss of valuable information, financial damage, or disruption of critical services. Here are some common types of data destruction attacks. Ransomware. Ransomware is a type of malware that encrypts files on a victim's computer or network, rendering them inaccessible. Attackers then demand a ransom payment in exchange for the decryption key. If the victim refuses to pay or cannot recover the files through other means, the data can be permanently lost. DDoS attacks. Distributed denial of service. DDoS attacks aim to overwhelm a network, system, or service with a flood of traffic, rendering it inaccessible to legitimate users. While DDoS attacks primarily focus on service disruption, they can indirectly cause data loss or destruction if the targeted systems are not adequately protected. Data wiping. In this type of attack, the attacker gains unauthorized access to a system or network and deliberately deletes or wipes out data, rendering it irrecoverable. This can be accomplished through various means, such as exploiting vulnerabilities, using malicious software, or executing targeted commands. Physical destruction. Data destruction attacks can also occur through physical means, where an attacker physically damages or destroys the storage devices containing the data. For example, an attacker may physically damage servers, hard drives, or other storage media to render the data inaccessible or unrecoverable. Insider threats. Insider threats refer to attacks that originate from within an organization. In some cases, employees or insiders with authorized access may intentionally delete or corrupt data. This can be motivated by various factors, such as revenge, financial gain, or even accidental actions. Preventing and mitigating data destruction attacks requires a multi-layered approach that includes robust security measures, regular backups, access controls, employee awareness training, and incident response plans. It is crucial to have strong cybersecurity practices in place to protect data from such attacks and to implement data recovery mechanisms in case of data loss or destruction. 7.18 Buffer overflow attacks. A buffer overflow attack is a type of security vulnerability that occurs when a program tries to store more data in a buffer, a temporary storage area, than it can handle. This extra data can overflow into adjacent memory locations, corrupting or overwriting the contents of those locations. By carefully crafting the input, an attacker can take advantage of this vulnerability to execute arbitrary code or gain unauthorized access to a system. Here is a step-by-step explanation of how a buffer overflow attack typically works. Buffer allocation. The vulnerable program allocates a fixed-size buffer in memory to store data. Insufficient bounds checking. The program does not perform adequate bounds checking on the data being input. It fails to verify that the input data will fit within the allocated buffer. Input data overflow. The attacker provides more input data than the buffer can hold, causing the excess data to overflow into adjacent memory locations. Overwriting memory. The overflowed data can overwrite important data structures, such as function pointers, return addresses, or control variables, with malicious values. Exploiting control flow. By manipulating the overwritten values, the attacker can redirect the execution flow of the program to execute their own code. Execution of malicious code. The attacker's code, typically called the payload, is executed with the privileges of the vulnerable program. This can lead to various consequences, such as remote code execution, denial of service, privilege escalation, or unauthorized access. Buffer overflow attacks can be highly dangerous and are a common target for attackers. To mitigate the risk of such attacks, software developers should implement secure coding practices, including proper input validation, bounds checking, and using secure programming libraries and techniques. Additionally, operating system vendors and security researchers work to identify and patch vulnerabilities to prevent buffer overflow attacks. Regularly updating software and systems can help protect against known vulnerabilities. 7.19 Data intercepting and session hijacking. Interception of data refers to the act of capturing or acquiring digital information during its transmission or storage. This interception can occur through various means, including electronic surveillance, hacking, or unauthorized access to networks or devices. The purpose of data interception can range from monitoring communications for legitimate purposes like law enforcement or intelligence gathering to malicious activities such as identity theft or industrial espionage. There are different methods and techniques used to intercept data, depending on the context and the level of sophistication involved. Here are a few common methods. Network sniffing. Attackers can use tools or software to monitor network traffic and capture data packets as they pass through the network. This can be done by gaining access to a compromised device or by setting up malicious software on the network. Malware. Malicious software, such as keyloggers or spyware, can be used to intercept and capture data on infected devices. These programs can record keystrokes, take screenshots, or capture other sensitive information without the user's knowledge. Data breaches. Data breaches occur when an unauthorized party gains access to a system or database and steals sensitive information. This can happen due to vulnerabilities in the system, weak passwords, or insider threats. To protect against data interception, it is important to implement robust security measures, including encryption, encrypting data before transmission ensures that even if intercepted, the information remains unreadable and unusable without the decryption key. Secure protocols. Using secure communication protocols, such as HTTPS for web traffic, helps protect data in transit from interception firewalls and intrusion detection systems. These systems can monitor network traffic and detect and block unauthorized access attempts. Strong authentication. Implementing multi-factor authentication and using strong passwords helps prevent unauthorized access to sensitive data. Regular updates and patches. Keeping software and systems up to date with the latest security patches helps mitigate vulnerabilities that could be exploited for data interception. It is important for individuals and organizations to stay informed about emerging threats and maintain proactive security practices to minimize the risk of data interception and protect sensitive information. Session hijacking, also known as session stealing or session-side jacking, refers to the unauthorized takeover of a user's active session on a computer system or web application. In session hijacking, an attacker intercepts and gains control over the session identifier or token that is used to authenticate and maintain a user's session. By doing so, the attacker can impersonate the legitimate user and perform actions on their behalf without their knowledge or consent. There are various methods that attackers can employ to hijack sessions. Packet sniffing. The attackers use packet sniffing techniques to capture network traffic and extract session information, such as session cookies or tokens, from unencrypted connections. Once they have obtained the session identifier, they can use it to impersonate the user. Session-side jacking. This method involves eavesdropping on a user's network communication, typically on public Wi-Fi networks. Attackers can use tools like Wireshark to intercept and capture session cookies or tokens sent over the network. Cross-site scripting. XSS. If a website is vulnerable to XSS attacks, an attacker can inject malicious scripts into the website, which are then executed by the victim's browsers. These scripts can be used to steal session information, including session cookies, and transmit them to the attacker. Session fixation. In session fixation attacks, an attacker tricks a user into using a predetermined session identifier. For example, they might send a malicious link to the victim, which contains a session identifier that the attacker already knows. When the user clicks on the link and logs in, the attacker can then use the fixed session identifier to hijack the session. Once an attacker successfully hijacks a session, they can perform various malicious activities, such as accessing sensitive information, manipulating user data, conducting fraudulent transactions, or even escalating their privileges within the system. To protect against session hijacking, it is essential to implement secure practices such as EU Secure and Encrypted communication protocols like HTTPS to prevent packet sniffing attacks. Implement secure session management techniques, including random and unpredictable session identifiers, session timeouts, and session token rotation. Employ secure coding practices to prevent cross-site scripting (XSS) vulnerabilities. Regularly update and patch web applications to fix security vulnerabilities. Use strong and secure session cookies, such as HTTP-only and secure flags, to protect against session theft. Educate users about the risks of using public Wi-Fi networks and encourage the use of VPNs, virtual private networks, to encrypt their internet traffic. By adopting these measures, both web application developers and users can reduce the risk of session hijacking and enhance the security of their online sessions. 7.20 Malformed URL attacks, also known as a URL injection attack or a URL-based attack, is a type of security vulnerability where an attacker manipulates a URL to exploit a vulnerability in a web application or system. By crafting a malicious URL, the attacker aims to deceive the application or system into performing unintended actions or revealing sensitive information. Here are a few examples of common malformed URL attacks. Path traversal. The attacker manipulates the URL to traverse directories and access files or directories outside of the intended scope. For example, they may append / sequences to the URL to move up the directory hierarchy. Directory listing. If a web server is not properly configured, an attacker can force the server to display a directory listing instead of the intended web page by manipulating the URL. This can expose sensitive files and directories to unauthorized access. SQL injection. By injecting SQL statements into the URL parameters, an attacker can manipulate the underlying database of a web application. This can allow them to extract or modify data, or even execute arbitrary commands on the database server. Cross-site scripting. XSS attackers can inject malicious scripts into URLs that are displayed on a website. When a user clicks on the manipulated URL, the script is executed in their browser, allowing the attacker to steal sensitive information or perform actions on the user's behalf. Command injection. In some cases, a web application might allow certain commands to be executed on the server through the URL. An attacker can exploit this by injecting additional commands into the URL, potentially gaining unauthorized access to the server, or performing malicious actions. Preventing malformed URL attacks typically involves implementing proper input validation and sanitization techniques within the web application. Here are a few preventive measures. Input validation. Validate and sanitize all user-supplied input, including URL parameters, before using them in any application logic or database queries. This helps to prevent unintended interpretation of malicious input. Whitelisting. Implement a strict whitelist of allowable characters and patterns for URL parameters. This helps to filter out any potentially malicious input. URL encoding. Properly encode and decode URL parameters to ensure that special characters are handled correctly and do not lead to unintended behavior. Server configuration. Configure web servers to disable directory listing and restrict access to sensitive files and directories. Ensure that default settings are properly modified to enhance security. Security testing. Regularly conduct security assessments, including vulnerability scanning and penetration testing, to identify and address any vulnerabilities in the web application. It is important to stay vigilant and keep your web applications and systems updated with the latest security patches to mitigate the risk of malformed URL attacks and other security vulnerabilities. 7.21 Phishing or QR code attacks are a type of cyber attack where malicious QR codes are used to deceive individuals into visiting fraudulent websites or downloading malicious apps. Attackers often disguise these QR codes in a way that appears legitimate, such as on flyers, posters, or even emails. When scanned, the QR code leads the user to a phishing website designed to steal sensitive information like login credentials or personal data. To protect yourself from QR code phishing, use a trusted QR code scanner. Download a reputable QR code scanner app from a trusted source to minimize the risk of scanning malicious codes. Examine the QR code. Before scanning, visually inspect the QR code for any suspicious elements or unusual URLs. If it seems suspicious, avoid scanning it. Stay cautious. Be cautious when scanning QR codes from unknown sources, especially if you did not expect to receive one. Verify the URL. After scanning, review the URL before entering any personal information. Ensure it matches the legitimate website's domain. Keep software updated. Keep your smartphone's operating system and apps up to date to patch security vulnerabilities. Use multi-factor authentication, MFA. Enable MFA whenever possible to add an extra layer of security to your online accounts. Educate yourself. Stay informed about the latest phishing techniques and cybersecurity best practices to protect yourself and others. By following these precautions, you can reduce the risk of falling victim to QR code phishing attacks. 7.22 Hot mic attacks refer to a microphone that is accidentally left on and transmitting audio without the speaker's knowledge. This makes it vulnerable to attack. Hot mic attacks involve hackers exploiting unintentionally activated microphones in devices to eavesdrop and collect sensitive audio data. Common targets include smartphones, laptops, smart speakers, and other IoT devices with microphones. Even virtual assistants like Siri, Alexa, and Google Assistant could be vulnerable. The microphone can be activated remotely by malware or a malicious app that bypasses security settings. Physical access to the device may not be required. Captured private conversations, phone calls, meetings, and other audio can then be sent to the hacker. This compromises privacy and allows data theft. These attacks demonstrate the need for better indicator lights and permissions around microphone access. Disabling microphone access when not actively using voice features can also help prevent hot mic attacks. Companies and users should be aware of this threat and take steps to guard against it through device security, settings management, and microphone discipline. Audio data can be highly sensitive. In summary, Hot mic attacks exploit always-on microphone access in today's devices and represent a concerning risk to privacy and security. Preventative measures are required. 7.23 Supply chain attacks target an organization or software hardware products through its supply chain dependencies and third-party elements. Attackers may compromise a supplier, vendor, or partner network and plant malware, a backdoor, or other vulnerability that gives them access. The goal is to infiltrate the ultimate target systems and data by moving laterally through its trusted supply chain. Examples include compromising software updates, injecting malware into software dependencies, hardware-level implants, and poisoning code repositories. Major supply chain attacks have targeted SolarWinds, Kasia, CodeCoff, and open-source repositories like NPM and PyPI. These attacks are increasing as more businesses rely on complex IT supply chains and software distributions. Preventative measures involve supply chain risk management, monitoring third-party access, vetting suppliers, diversifying vendors, auditing code, and updating regularly. Companies should aim for end-to-end supply chain visibility, control, and diversity. Staying on top of updates and patches is also key. In summary, supply chain attacks represent an insidious threat today through third-party compromise. Strong supplier security and supply chain hygiene are crucial to mitigate this risk. 7.24 AI-powered cyber attacks. AI can be misused by attackers to automate, optimize, and scale cyber attacks more effectively. AI techniques like machine learning allow attackers to analyze volumes of data, adapt to defenses, evade detection, and exploit vulnerabilities in software or networks. Examples include using AI for smarter spear phishing, credential stuffing, generating disinformation, finding bugs in code, and automating different attack vectors. Attackers may also use AI to analyze large sets of stolen data and information to gain insights faster. This makes data breaches more lucrative. On the defense side, AI is being used for pattern recognition to detect emerging attacks, automated threat intelligence, and analyzing security data at scale. Overall, there is an AI arms race emerging in cybersecurity between attackers and defenders. As AI advances, attacks and defenses will become more sophisticated and automated. This may expand the threat landscape. To mitigate risks, security teams need AI expertise, continuous training of AI systems, multi-layered defenses, and collaboration between humans and AI. In summary, while AI brings many benefits, it also empowers adversaries. Proactive efforts are required to guard against AI-enhanced cyber attacks and ensure security keeps pace. 7.25 Keyloggers. A keylogger is a type of surveillance technology used to monitor and record each keystroke typed on a specific computer. Here are some key details about keyloggers. They record all keyboard input, including passwords, emails, messages, and any other text typed by a user. Keyloggers save this data locally or transmit it covertly to a remote receiver. They are used both by cybercriminals for stealing sensitive data as well as lawfully to monitor employees or minor children. Keyloggers can be software installed on a computer, a physical device plugged in between the computer and keyboard, or a script run remotely. Signs of a possible keylogger include keyboard malfunctions, unusual activity lights, strange connections, and performance issues. Antivirus software can detect and remove some keyloggers, but advanced ones using rootkits can evade detection. Best practices to prevent keyloggers include covering webcams, keeping software updated, avoiding unauthorized downloads, and scanning regularly with antivirus software. Users should also watch for suspicious behavior like encrypted traffic, unfamiliar processes or programs running, and unexplained disk space usage. Keylogger evidence is legally admissible only if installed by authorized parties like parents or employers monitoring their own systems. Overall, keyloggers represent a powerful surveillance threat that users should be knowledgeable about in order to detect and mitigate.